Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rebel Nutritionist. I'm your host, Meryl Brandwine, and I'm the owner of the Brandwine Institute for Nutrition and Wellness, a holistic wellness center located in beautiful South Florida. We'll focus on nutrition, movement, and emotional balance so that when it comes to the real skinny about health, you'll have all the information you need to meet your own personal goals. We're excited to show you the way to long-term healthy living. So let's dive in and get started. Welcome, everybody, to the Rebel Nutritionist podcast. Today, I am really thrilled to have Dr. Sherri Greene on. As you all know, I have been on my own soul-searching journey. We've talked about the stuff and the work that I've done with Dr. Joe Dispenza, not with, but I wish it was with Dr. Joe Dispenza, but the work that I've been working on personally. And we've talked a lot about quantum energy, what is the quantum, and my work and my meditations have really been kind of thrusting me into this direction of a little bit of unknowing, a little bit of intuition, a little bit of divine guidance. And so I met Dr. Sherri. I think it definitely was a divine intervention.
No doubt.
We met at a networking event.
Yep.
We happened to sit down next to each other, started talking, and boom, the rest is history. I feel like we became really fast friends. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Sherri Greene, let her tell her what she does, her story a little bit, and we're just going to roll right into this work of the ethers, the essence of the whatever's out there. But let's dive in. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to be here.
Same.
And yes, we've had so many great conversations that we could have recorded even before we got here.
Oh my gosh, right.
So we met at that networking party. I'm recently moved to Fort Lauderdale. Got here in September of 2022. I came from 30 plus years in New York City in private practice. And my practice has really continually evolved, which is I'm sure yours has over time through the years. And my background is in podiatric medicine and surgery. And I got into holistic, alternative, functional medicine really early on, recognizing that drugs and surgery were not enough. And we were so many missing pieces. And that led me down so many different pathways of like alternative medicine and energy medicine and things like what you're studying right now, and working with different teachers and healers. And I started incorporating a lot of nutritional work into my practice. And I started seeing incredible things happen with my patients, just changing their diet. And all these people that were chronically inflamed with all these different types of injuries, it was just a big aha moment.
Yeah.
So that really started me on that journey of, more functional approach and holistic approach to chronic conditions, to acute conditions. And my journey kept going. I just kept finding other things that I wanted to explore and learn about. And it was be like, I'd bring it back into my tool bag. Like whatever else I would learn, it was like my tool bag was getting bigger and bigger.
I know that feeling.
And it was really fabulous because it made it more fun for me and exciting. And it was much more, the results were like for themselves. I could see all the results with 100%. People. So that was really great. And then more unfolded really with my own health and my own healing journey. And that led me going down more rabbit holes and deeper places of figuring out what was really going on for me. And I can go into a little bit of that story.
I think that, and I love there's like a lot of parallels, right? I mean, as you start to do this work and you go deeper and deeper, for me, I've started working, I was diving deep into the whole immune system, because I knew just from the training in functional medicine, you start to say inflammation, and when you say inflammation, you see inflammation, inflammation's tied back to the immune system. So I've been really honing in on that. And I think that is, when I say it's divinely intervened, I mean, I really do believe that, because the work that now that you're doing and you and I talk about is based all on the immune system.
It is.
And so I would love to hear the story. Let's talk about how you now got into where you are.
So I had been seeing many, many different practitioners because I had severe endometriosis. That was the biggest thing for me, but I had other symptoms as well. That I had irritable bowel syndrome when I was, a child, and that was a story for me through my life of just always having gut issues and stomach problems. And but the endometriosis was tough, and I had a couple of surgeries at the time, and I had been doing, immediately you get put on birth control for pain, and it works until it doesn't work, but it doesn't really work, so it becomes a Band-Aid.
Well, it's right. I was just going to say it's the Band-Aid.
So that led me to seeing so many different types of, besides seeing 5 different gynecologists, because the way what was happening for me was slightly different than the next person. So it was pretty bad, and it was unique. And my gynecologist was like, I don't understand why you cramp the way you cramp, and the amount of days and how it was happening for me. So hence I end up having a close friend at the time who introduced me to Anthony William. And she was
Anthony William, also known as the medical medium.
Exactly. And so it wasn't so far-fetched for me, because I had done a lot of spiritual work and studied with spiritual teachers, and was kind of tuned into the metaphysical, the energy world, all of these things. So it wasn't so far off, but that is a unique story in of itself. But she introduced me to him at that time, and I think his first book wasn't quite out yet, and because this was in 2015. And so
really? His first book wasn't out then?
Yeah, no, it came out in 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it was the beginning of 2016 that it came out. It was either end of 2015 or beginning of 2016. But I talked to him at the very end of 2015. So it was a really phenomenal experience of having that conversation with him, and it just completely exploded my practice, my life, because it was all these missing pieces with patients that I've been working with, that there was more that was needed for them. And so it was really magical to see what was happening. And so I just dove deep into the books, as I know you are right now, and it really just I had to change so much of my thinking. And everything that I learned, I had to be open to relearning something else. So that was a journey, and then bringing it into my practice and how to ground it a little bit for people, so that may not understand, that there's no double-blind crossover study for this. And, I think that, all of it made sense. And I feel like anybody who reads his books actually opens up and says, it just makes sense. And they find themselves. That's what I hear, is like, I ask the question, so how did you find Anthony William, medical medium? And they say, well, this person or this book, it showed up for me, and I was told about it 5 years ago, and it came back again. And it was me. I read myself in those chapters.
Yeah. For those of you that are not familiar with the medical medium, Anthony William, tell his story a little bit.
So Anthony is known as a medical medium, and basically what it is that since he's been a child, 4 years or 5 years old, that he hears a voice in talking into his ear, and it's not channeling. It's very, very different, and everything has been about a lot of different things, but his main work is about health and wellness, and really coming up with the answers to mystery chronic conditions that people have been suffering with, and that medicine hasn't really quite grasped and doesn't know. But actually every day there's more studies that are coming out proving what he's been saying for many, many years already. So it's that is just a little nugget, a nutshell. Like, he's got a whole story, and it's really fascinating story. But the thing is, the information that he brings through about these conditions like Hashimoto's thyroiditis and MS and rheumatoid arthritis and endometriosis and PCOS, and the list goes on and on and on about all these missing pieces that are helping people to get to the root of the issue,
the real root cause. And I think there's so many places I want to go with this, but the reason I wanted Dr. Sherri to come on and talk about this is because it's not just anecdotal experience that you've got, right? She has brought this work into her practice and has witnessed and has helped people really shift. And she works with really chronically ill people, right? I mean, you've got the most chronic of the chronic, and they have healed.
People are healing, absolutely. It's a journey. It's never a straight
Well,
line.
no, it's never. We always say that, right? It is. I always say my journey has been 25 years in the making, and it's still going, right? Because it never ends, really. It never ends.
It never ends. Yeah.
And I think that is the beauty of this conversation. But to give you some context, like I had been introduced to the medical medium many, many, many years ago, and the whole celery juice thing, and I found it hard to wrap my head around, right? In the science world, especially as a science person, right? You want a study to show something. You want proof. You want those double blind, right? Placebo crossover studies, blah, blah, blah. And yet there wasn't any of that. And so at that time, I probably put it down and shelved it. And now, as I have evolved spiritually and energetically and all of that, I picked it up after meeting you, and I'm like, wow, you know what? There is something that definitely resonates. And I think in the words of, because part of what Joe Dispenza talks about is energy, is that quantum, the stuff that you cannot see and touch and feel, but we know is very real.
Yeah.
And that it does, that your thoughts create your biology, that how you think and what you think shift your biology. And so if there is, and I do believe that there are, whether it's other life forms, whether it's beings, whatever you want to call it, right? That we get messages. I mean, there is no coincidence in even how we've met, how I've been doing some of this work, some of the symptoms that I've talked to you about and we've made connections on. So, you could be listening and go, oh, this is woo-woo. I will tell you, this is anything but. And I'm excited. I'm going to start my 9-day cleanse. Well, now I'm doing it tomorrow instead of Monday, but I have found it fascinating because in the work that I've been doing with the immune system, and then I go back and read what he writes, and the fact that he has no medical training and he has not gone to school for any of this, and he's very clear about that. The way he writes, it would be impossible for him to know what he knows without having someone talking in his ear, because he's spot on with the biochemistry. He's spot on with the immune system. He's spot on with so many explanations of how our body works.
Right. And there's undiscovered science that's in there, right?
100%, right?
Yes. Kind of like when it's explained to you, it's something, some of it is something so new and so unique. And by the way, there are a lot of doctors that actually consult with him and that have called him over.
Well, and that's what and the thing is you don't hear about it, but you do read about it. And you have spoken to him personally. You have, she's got like the hotline. And I just find it fascinating. I mean, we've had hours and hours of conversation already about all of this.
In a very short period of time.
Right, in a very short, I'm telling you, I said to Sherri yesterday, I'm like, I think our souls were connected in another life. There's definitely some kind of synergy that is, again, inexplicable. But I think that is the beauty. Some of this, especially if you're sick and you're being led down a path of just... a mess of
doctors,
polypharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah.
And doctors who are just guessing at what's wrong with you. People come in and it's like labeling, oh, I have this diagnosis and I have this diagnosis and I have this diagnosis. And I'm like, let's take away all the diagnoses. Let's talk about how you're feeling.
Right.
I had someone come in the other day and they were so hell-bent on their diagnosis.
The label.
Yeah,
right?
the label.
Yeah.
The label. I'm like, let's take away the label. Let's talk about
Symptoms.
you as the person and how are you feeling? And I think there is a way, that we can talk about how do we bring in the synergy of what the medical medium work has to offer and even segue it in a way so that it's literally digestible for people.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
and we were talking, and I think that's how you also started, right?
Yeah,
Is that...
I mean, it was like you have to start somewhere, and
Right.
not everybody's ready to jump full in. There are people that jump headfirst into it,
Right.
And some people, and I was baby stepping my way into it as well. So
Yeah.
it takes time. You got to meet people where they're at, and it's a journey, and you peeling away layers of an onion, and depending on what the symptoms are, how long somebody's been sick, what their toxic load is, what their viral load is, what all of these things are, and it really takes time to unravel when somebody has gone through.
Right.
I usually see people who have been through at least 8 or 9 different functional medicine doctors, other doctors. It's heartbreaking sometimes to watch that.
Totally.
So it's like they come in with they email and send me all this big stack. I'm sure you do get it, of all these testings that they've had,
and the supplements.
and then they're still suffering and they're still struggling.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're missing something here, right? And most of alternative medicine and conventional medicine is missing it.
Yep.
And so there's these pieces and parts that I really have found in the medical medium information that has been just life-changing.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head when you said we're missing something. So when I did my immune course, and then I go back and I'm trying to kind of put these puzzle pieces together for my clients, and I'm like, I'm missing something. I'm missing something. Not that I mean, look, people get better, and the work that we do is so beneficial. People get better.
Absolutely.
But what is the longevity? You know, you want to make sure that you're giving people the tools for the long haul, and that they understand, you know, how do I support my immune system? Look, I had cancer. And there is nothing to say, God forbid, of course, a million times, that, you know, there's no guarantee I'm not going to get anything down the road. And with our environment the way it is, and our food supply the way it is, and the chemicals that we're exposed to, and all of that, forget about our, you know, toxic thoughts, right? But not that we have any of those, but with everything that we are dealt with, what was that thing, or what are the things that I wanted to add in here that would solidify or bring it all to congeal everything that I'm doing?
Yeah.
And I do feel like so much of what Anthony talks about resonates. And I think that's the key.
It is.
It's got to resonate and feel intuitive, and it's got to feel viscerally right.
Yeah. It does. It has to fit. And, you know, we all have doubts as we go through journeys, right? Because if we're not getting better immediately that doubt comes in.
Oh, yes.
Right? So
we
both work with people.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Like,
so,
I want to feel better tomorrow. I want to see results, you know, next week. I've been doing this a week. Why don't I feel different?
Exactly. So, yeah, that's where the coaching comes in, and being able to, you know, step people through the process, because some of what happens, like what I say a lot, is that we're doing with medical medium information is very different from everything that's out there.
I will
and you
tell
know
you,
that,
yes,
right?
I 100% know
and
that.
you've experienced it now. So what happens is your body might be responding in ways that you're not going to be able to read about in a book. Like you just don't know. I mean, there's so many levels.
Well, that's why I call you, Sherri. Wait, thank God for that.
Wait, help me make sense of this?
Yes.
I mean, we all need those people in our lives to help us through that journey. I had it as well. And so it is a process of trust, and having somebody help guide you through it. Yeah. And also being able to troubleshoot when things don't go perfectly, because there are times when you might be like, it could be detox, but a lot of times it's a flare, and the difference between the two. So that comes into play too.
And that, I think, is the beauty of the coaching. And we've been talking about, you know, how do we incorporate this work together to be able to support people in that way, because it is a very different paradigm. It's a very different way of thinking, but it's different, but it's not. That's what I feel like. It's like different, but there's some familiarity in it that resonates in the way. So one of the philosophies and the way that Anthony relates back to things is that our immune system really gets triggered from 2 things. Yeah. Injuries and pathogens. And this we know because I learned about this in my immune course, right? We know that's how the immune system gets triggered.
The inflammation, right?
Pain. Right.
It's either a pathogen, or an injury,
right? And then the immune system gets activated.
Exactly, because, you know, we're dealing with the different varieties of toxins that people don't even realize.
Correct.
Like we were talking about earlier, like my exposure recently to like those dryer smells that keep coming into my apartment and what that does. And so you may not realize it right in the moment, but that just adds to your toxic load. And some people are very chemically sensitive, and some people don't even know that they're chemically sensitive, and it's acting as a trigger.
Yep. Oh yeah. So, and I think, again, I mean, we can go on so many tangents with this, but one of the things that I don't think we think about enough is our toxic exposure. We hear about, I need to change my diet. And I need, how should I be eating, or I should be exercising. And I can't get the results I want with my diet. I can't get the results that I want with feeling better. I can't. And what we're not talking about is toxicity. So it was interesting. I got an article about, was it easier to be skinny in the 80s than it is now, right?
That's interesting.
I was talking about some weight loss but difficult, people were having a hard time. And so the article talks about the food, and the article talks about the gut microbiome. Okay, those are all relevant, but what the article does not talk about is our toxic load.
Right.
And our toxic load is it affects our liver. It toxins hang out in the fat cells. So the more you are exposed to, the more we hold on to. And I always say, like, toxins act like a insulator or fat acts like an insulator for the toxins.
Right. Right.
And so it's hard to lose body fat. Like, we have to wake up and say, maybe why I can't lose weight is because I'm so toxic. Maybe why I don't feel well is because I'm so toxic.
Exactly. And a lot of that toxicity is sitting in the liver, right?
Yep.
So that's what we don't know.
Yes.
Because all these people are walking around with sluggish and fatty livers, and they don't even know that they are.
If you look at the incidence of fatty liver disease, like
it's
when
huge.
I was training,
Yeah.
non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, you saw maybe once.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Right now I have people coming to me, and I have young people
being diagnosed,
coming to me, and they're like, we have fatty liver. And I'm like, oh my God. So like, let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, that is one of the things that, Anthony has really shed the light on, and in the book Liver Rescue, where he's really talked about the idea of like when women get really, really stuck being able to lose weight, you got to look back to the liver. And
you hear that, ladies? When you get stuck losing weight, we got to look at the liver. It's not about reducing the calories.
Exactly.
It's not about spending any more time in the gym. I mean, maybe, but it is liver.
Right. And it's not, and it's also the opposite of not going keto or paleo and being high fat, high protein. And that's like a real nuance of like eating the foods that are really going to help the liver to start to cleanse and to start to detox, and lowering the fats. That's the difference. Yeah. And so that's when the food wars come about, and we have that long discussion about it. Right?
Yeah. I mean, and I was resistant. I'm like, I want my fat. But like I said, I'm going to do my 9-day cleanse and obviously report back to everybody. But I've already started incorporating some things, right? Yeah. I've been doing my celery juice this week, and I've been kind of teetering. And of course, the big one is giving up my coffee, which I will do for 9 days, and then I'll see. But Anthony makes a very compelling story for getting rid of coffee.
Yes.
But I do, again, the principles behind what he talks about makes sense if you take a step back and yes, you don't dig your heels into the food war frenzy.
Yeah.
That I got to go keto and I got to go paleo. And don't forget, these philosophies there isn't one philosophy that has been proven, tried and true over and over that works for everybody. And then some of these work for a short time for some people, but then they don't work for a long term, right? And so again, most of these just came about because of the industry, diet culture's desire for a quick fix.
Yes. Oh, we all want quick fixes, right?
Well, true.
Yeah. But we really do. That's part of the problem, and not really understanding the nuances, all of it, right?
Yeah.
So the nuances of, not necessarily putting you into a category of being plant-based or you're vegan or you're paleo, or let's really deal with what's underneath. And if we can clean that up first, and if we can work with people and then basically let them decide, where do you want to land?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the beauty of it is, okay, let's start here. Yeah, it's a little restrictive and right, but there's the means to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like what I say to people all the time, because they'll be like, they come in here and we always meet people where they're at, and it's not about deprivation and it's not about starvation. It's really about, let's talk about how you are nourishing your body. Let's talk about nourishment. And so the principles of what Anthony talks about in doing detoxification is about cleaning out the liver. And it's not a 3-day juice cleanse, people. It's not just like, I'm going to drink some green juice and I'm going to be like all cleansed, right? That is not, it's not, we're talking about really physiologically allowing the liver to detoxify everything you eat, drink, and breathe.
Right. And the things that have been like kind of sitting, these pathogens that have been in our environment, and in talking about, COVID and all these problems that are people that are having, like once they get COVID and what gets triggered and why it becomes a more of a complicated case for a lot of people, because they need to, there's certain things that need to happen with the pathogens that were already there in the body. Right.
So when we're talking about pathogens, we're talking about basically viruses, right, if you will, that we have been exposed to that are kind of underlying. They're like some are lying dormant, right? I guess, is that the best way to say it, right? Absolutely. They're dormant in the body. And then something happens in our life that triggers them to come up. I have no doubt, and I'll just relate this back to me because I can. For me, when I look back at my whole cancer journey, and again, you can never say exactly why, but I do see these tremendous correlations to, I used to get strep throat when I was young, and a lot. I mean, to the point where when I was 8 or whatever it was, I got my tonsils out. And then and then you get chickenpox and you get all these things and you have these viruses. Oh yeah. And then I had HPV, right? Because what young woman when you're in college and you're 20 doesn't have HPV now?
Right.
And so I have all these viruses. Now, I never had any issues with them once I became an adult or whatever that I knew of, right? I was fine. And then lo and behold, I have 3 children within a very short period of time, right? I had my kids boom, boom, boom. Within 4.5 years, I had 3 kids. And I had a miscarriage in between one of those. And then, oh, by the way, I lived on a golf course that I was on the back end of the golf course. And I remember smelling the pest. I remember there was, so we would complain to the golf course that there was this awful smell. There was actually like a pile, I want to say almost like of mulch or whatever the hell it was, right behind my house. And we used to complain that it smelled so bad. Right? So lo and behold, I'm living in this house a year. And then I have my baby, and then 6 weeks later, I get diagnosed with blood cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma. And then you go back and look at the correlations with toxicity, environmental chemicals, right? Like the Roundup and all of those things. And then, oh, by the way, being pregnant zaps your immune system. So all of that coming up. So I am sure,
because your immune system is so into the reproductive. It's protecting the baby. It's just for the baby.
Just protecting the baby. Thank God it protected my baby, right? But so when I go back and look at what Anthony has to say about Epstein-Barr, about these viruses, how they really then rear their ugly heads and trigger everything else, that for me, maybe not for you guys, but for me, it made total intuitive sense.
Yeah.
And even though I feel amazing, there were some symptoms that I was sharing with you that you said, well, that kind of ties back to EBV. So I'm like, okay, I think I want to get rid of this virus once and for all, so that I can arm myself in the best way possible moving forward with my longevity and my wellness, right? I mean, and I said to you, like, thank God I'm not sick, but I'm doing this preventatively. And there's not enough of us that are doing it preventatively. Like you were also, you had this debilitating, you had these debilitating illnesses and so tell your story a little bit. I know you mentioned the endometriosis, but like walk us through, what did that look like? Because you had the endometriosis and you had Lyme and you had IBS. Like what was your journey? And then, because you did a lot of things and still weren't feeling better.
I was very deeply into nutrition, and I was eating quote unquote healthy, and I was doing it all. And for me, when I got diagnosed with Lyme disease. What year was that? It was back in 20, I think, well, I had it. I definitely had it for a few years because I was starting, everybody was saying, oh, it's your hormones, it's this, it's that. And I was so chronically fatigued. And I remember walking up subway stairs in New York City and feeling winded when I got to the stop at the stairs. And I would work out. I was a big workout person. I was just like, why is this happening and why can't I breathe? And I also had terrible brain fog. I would be sitting in my office trying to write a note on a patient and I would stare. I would just like stare at the wall. Oh, wow. And I was like, I kept saying like, focus, focus. And I remember how hard it was for me to like, feel like my brain wasn't working the way it should have been working. And so it was all these little things that were really, really happening for me. But so when there was 3 very, very stressful events in my life at the time. It was a very bad breakup, and it was a tax thing that was going on for me at the time. And then it was the diagnosis of Lyme, and it was those 3 things that actually caused the endometrial type of cramping to just off the rails. And that's when it got really, really bad. And that's really what led me on this journey to keep exploring and figure it out. And then when I met Anthony in 2015 and explained to me really what the root cause of that was, and I remember sitting there at that moment being like, how is that possible? Like,
right, because he didn't touch you. He just basically did it.
We were on the phone.
Right, he was right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You were on the phone. He basically told you what was going on.
Yes.
And you're like, you're crazy.
He told me what the root cause, and I didn't. So here's what I'll explain. For me, and this is not all endometrial. Most of the time, EBV is involved. Strep can be involved, streptococcus. But for me, with the type of pain and discomfort, and with the other symptoms that I was having, which I didn't go into all of that, it was really shingles. It was non-rashing shingles. So it was shingles in my uterus and shingles in my intestinal tract. Hence me having all kinds of intestinal problems growing up, and I easily could have been diagnosed with Crohn's or colitis. And so at that moment when he told me that, I was kind of like, I never had a rash. I don't understand. And can we talk about this a little bit more deeply? And he did, explained it to me really well. And everything that he said made complete and total sense. And that really started my, like that like when you hear something that kind of just changes your world and be like, wait a minute, how is that possible? And is it possible? And if it is, like, oh my God, right? What do I do now? Right. And it turns everything around. And then our conversation went further and further about things and about patients that I was working with. And I'm like, so explain to me this, explain to me that. And so it was really just that moment of like that divine intervention of something coming else into because for me, it was always about, I want to find solutions for patients. And I know that's for you.
Yes, 100%.
It's like you want to, like, you're so driven to help people, serve people, and to figure out what is wrong. Like, why can't this person get better? Yeah. And so when you get this new, and I used to say, like, when I would introduce this to patients, and I'd say, it would really be malpractice for me not to share this information for you. So it was that important, even if it seems so outside of the box and doesn't make any sense. And yes, we don't have this study or that study, but you know what? It's free information that's available, and the wisdom that's in it is.
Well, and I feel, look, if you've been to 8 or 9 doctors and you're on a million medications and nothing has worked, and you are at your
whatever,
right? Like, what do you have to lose?
You have nothing to lose,
right? You have absolutely nothing to lose
except some discipline and changing some things.
Yeah, but I'm saying in terms of like, there's no downside to trying it. What would happen? Okay, you're disappointed that it didn't work. But from what I gather from the reading, and I have thrown myself into these books, Sherri knows, into the deep end, because I just am a voracious, like my appetite for learning and for understanding this stuff is voracious.
It is.
Because
we're very similar to that.
Yeah, right. Like, because I just, I want to help people, right? And if I know that, and if it makes sense, again, one thing that I have learned in the course of the last 5 years since I've been divorced and doing my work on myself is I'm trusting my intuition. I am all in on my intuition because it's been right 100% of the time.
So good, so good.
And so there is something that forget about the divine intervention of it all, right? That intuitively
You feel it.
speaks to me.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing my meditative work and I'm saying, show me, literally, like, show me the way, guide me, right? I don't need to know the how, but guide me.
Yeah.
And everything is, all roads are converging in this way.
Yeah.
Then how do I not pay attention to it?
Right. Right.
You
Exactly.
know, and that's why I'm saying, like, maybe I was going out on a limb doing this podcast with you, but I'm like, God, I really feel so strong about this that if, hey, I am the rebel. So
You are. You're the rebel nutritionist.
we need to be talking about this.
Yeah, that's great.
But right, going back to what do you have to lose? So
So I
when
dove
you
in.
when he's okay, so
I
you dove in.
I dove in and changed everything. I actually took out all the animal protein at that time, and I had been plant-based,
Okay.
for a period of time. I was all raw food, and I remember when Anthony wanted me to do this, and I had said, I did that, and it didn't work, and that's when the whole fat conversation came.
Right.
And so it really was about understanding about the fat I was eating. Even when I was plant-based, it was so high. And so when your fats are that high, you really can't deeply cleanse, and it wasn't working. And so the idea is you've got to go after the pathogens. You've got to, start to cleanse your liver. And you can do this. And I stepped into it very gently. Like, caffeine didn't come out of my diet right away. It was a really tough one for me.
Yeah.
And, it was slowly, okay, next layer, take this out. And as I went along, things were shifting, and different symptoms that I'd had in the past, and digestive symptoms and things like that. So it was a process for me. It really was, for sure. And it is for a lot of people. There's other people.
Well, I think it has to be, you know, right? I mean, what were you going to say? There's other people.
Well, there's other people that, there's some people that it really have a hard time changing their diet. There's just no doubt.
I think most people.
Yeah, I would say yes. Most people. Some people somehow it's easier. I don't
know. I guess maybe people who don't love food. I don't know. Maybe.
True.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there are, but some people just do it, and they're just eating the same thing every day, and so for them it's not a big deal, right?
Yeah,
but when you love food and you're a foodie,
and you're out and about, and you're going to restaurants, and you're socializing, and you're doing all these things, and all of a sudden you go into restaurants, and you're like, oh God, they're using this, or they're using this kind of oil, and I can't eat that
now. But
yeah, it's a tricky in the restaurant world, and being with family members who want you to eat like they eat, and they're kind of conflicted when you're changing so much, and they don't really know where to put you.
There's a whole exactly. What box do you fit in?
Yeah.
What table do you go to?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so, it's a journey and a process, but it's so well worth it, because what if we don't have our health? What do we have?
Nothing.
Right?
Can't have anything. Right. So how long was it that you? So again, there was the transition that was slow. Like, how long was it before you started to really notice?
Yeah.
What was that? Ooh, I feel,
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different process when you start, how you feel, and you can sort of feel some of those changes already when you're taking out certain foods that are maybe not, that we call them filler foods, or they're just they're not really giving you all the nutrition that you can get, and all the hydration you can get.
Right,
and
like pita chips.
Yeah. And then you start to feel differently in your mind, body, spirit. Everything starts to shift. And so certain things were getting better, but for me, honestly, the cramping and the endometriosis, because remember, I was diagnosed. Well, you don't know this, but I was diagnosed with endometriosis right when I got my cycle, because my mom had it. So we were looking for that immediately, and I had extremely painful periods, and I would miss the first 2 days of school, and the amount of what was happening for me. So I was in there right at the start. So this is, a lot of years that went for me. So, there are certain, you have to recognize there are certain tissue changes over time that it's not so simple to reverse. Right.
Okay.
So it really was a very, very painful, difficult journey. I got to the place where, when I met Anthony, I had every month 16 days of pain.
Wow.
Every day, every month. So it wasn't just during menstruation. It was way
Pain
more.
wow.
Yeah, it was way more. And I was taking pharmaceuticals and I was getting shots of Toradol and I mean it was a lot. So it was a lot. So for me it really, it's been this long journey of reversing stuff. And I fully believe, as I know you do, that the body can heal from anything. And but what is healing and how much healing and so I would say for everybody it's a different story.
Yes.
I see miraculous changes within 6 months with people. I see changes that take 6 years for people.
Yeah.
So it's a really different story. So it was taking quite a while for things to like shift in my body. And that's where I feel like I'm really good with helping people, that it's a long, you've got to be patient. You have to be patient when you're looking to heal a chronic illness that you've had
for a long
time. And that's the people that end up actually finding this work, is they've searched and they end up with this information, and they've been searching for years, because most of the people that I work with have been sick for like 5, 10, 15, 20 years already.
Well, and then what happens, right? You start with one thing and then the immune system just keeps going, right?
Yeah.
You end up with another thing and another, that's what happens.
Yes. You think, so you heal one thing and you're like, I got it. And then 3 years later, something else shows up and you're like, well, how did I get diabetes all of a sudden?
Right.
Like, why?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's tricky. It's everybody's journey is so unique, but this particular journey, I feel, it can be for everybody.
Right.
It's just a matter of, where are you at? What are you looking to heal? And let's get to the real root of what the issue is.
Well, and I think that's the key, is the real root, and not that what we do in functional medicine is not, right? I mean, it's a piece of the, right. And I feel like I've said to Sherri is that, she's had people who have had experience with the medical medium. We have people who maybe don't and are listening to this and going, okay, you've really lost your marbles.
Hopefully not.
But no. But I feel like, again, there's a way to integrate this, because it does make so much sense.
Yeah.
And a way to integrate that we could still meet you where you're at and bring in some of these principles.
There's
and
so many tools, right?
So many tools. And, let's just peel away the pretense of what we think we should be doing. I think the issue that I don't think I know, one of the things is there's so much information on social media, and then that there's so much information. I had a woman come in yesterday, I swear, I kid you not. She started saying, well, I heard this off of TikTok and I heard that off of TikTok, so I bought this and I bought that, and I'm just looking at her like, and how is that helping you? And first of all, she hadn't started a few of the supplements. I'm like, why did you buy them? She goes, well, it sounded good, and they sounded good. We are such suckers for, and I mean that in the nicest of ways, the most respectful of ways.
Because we're searching, right?
Because we are searching, and don't forget, these companies are appealing to your emotion.
Oh, yeah.
They know exactly what they're going after.
Yep.
They know exactly your vulnerability, and they get you right there. And yet we buy it hook, line, and sinker.
It's a good presentation.
It's a great presentation. There was a doctor that was talking about AG1, the athletic greens.
Every day I hear that.
Right. And everybody's like, AG greens. And she was finally saying, AG greens aren't all that, people. They're like a good multivitamin. I'm like, yes. Like and then people come to me, I decided to take this and this and this. And I'm like, you're spending a lot of money on a lot of nonsense. So
that's great.
I feel like we also have to peel away this layer of no, people on TikTok are not the experts. You can't get a diagnosis in a minute, people. You can't get results just following what it's the foundation of I always say it's the pillars of health. And I know, we had talked about this. Like, you could try to biohack all you want. Yep. I mean, I feel like the biohacking community just keeps growing and growing and growing.
It does.
And I'm not knocking it. Look, there are some great devices out there, heart math and some of these other things. And, that's part of the biohacking world. And look, getting feedback, you've got an Oura ring on, right? Like getting feedback about what's going on in your body, I think is valuable.
Sure, it can be,
right?
As long as we don't get too, like the CGM, the
right.
continuous glucose monitoring is a little I feel like is getting a little out of control.
It's
because
getting
people
very out
are
of control.
getting, you know, you're looking at a snapshot and you're getting so scared about like if you eat a piece of fruit and all of a sudden, you know, like you get frayed. I think it's making people more afraid.
It is making people more afraid, and I have people who they're just the stress of eating is sending the glucose up.
Yes.
Right, that the cortisol being released because of the stress is making their glucose. They're like, I didn't eat anything, but I was all nervous. I'm like, because the cortisol just shot your glucose up. I mean, so I feel like you can get it lost in the conundrum of all of the information. And I think it's still, it's almost like, and I think Anthony talks about this. We've got to, I know who also talked about it, Bruce Lipton, who I also, like, we have to come back and slow things down. Mm-hmm. Sure. We are just on this crazy vortex into no man's land with the biohacking and, the diet wars and all of this, it still has to come back to the N of one. You are your own best experiment. You are an individual. This work has to be individualized. There is nothing out there in the TikTok, Instagram ether that is going to cure you in a day.
With one supplement.
And with one supplement.
One product.
Right? If you're not looking at your sleep and you're not looking at your stress and you're not looking at the food that you're eating and you're not moving your body and you're not looking at your environment and you're not looking at your mental, emotional stuff.
Sure.
Like, that's the foundation. You can biohack all you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to start with that stuff. And I'm sure our listeners would love just some simple tips. If you're looking to stick your toe in the water, what are some basic foundational things that we would want to at least start with? I mean, I know there's bigger conversations. We actually are going to have a whole protein conversation because everybody's talking about protein. And I got my girls calling me all the time. My lady's like, I don't get enough protein. Am I getting enough protein? I had a conversation today with a woman. I can't get enough protein. I think, we're going to have this protein conversation. So that'll come next. But just for people who want to dabble, right? Like, for me, it's going to be a big step to get off the caffeine, people.
Yeah.
You all know, I love my cup of coffee in the morning. I am going to do it for the 9 days and I'll report back. But so I'm sure, caffeine is one thing.
Caffeine is one thing, definitely. I mean, if we're looking at what do we do, what's doable? And what's doable to one person may not be doable to somebody else.
Right. If you were talking to me for the very first time, I'd be like, no, I'm not negotiating caffeine. So what's the next thing?
So the next thing I'd say, okay, Meryl, how about if you have a glass when you first wake up before your caffeine, if you take a nice tall glass, 16 ounces of water, purified water with a half lemon. And you start your day with that. Yeah. So you start your day with that so you flush your system because you're basically cleansing overnight, your liver's cleansing, and you want to continue with that process when you wake up. So you will flush, and you want to flush all the toxins that we're going through. So you do that, you wait 20 minutes, and then, I probably wouldn't say to have your caffeine. I would say to introduce people to celery juice because I think celery juice is a game changer for a lot of people. A lot of people with digestive issues. It helps your adrenals. It's mineral salts for your brain. Yeah. There are so many things. Not everybody's ready to jump into the celery juice or has a juicer, but it really is something that's very powerful baseline.
So because I've been doing this, right? So I think people want to know, okay, so I've done the lemon water. And it's been fine. Although, and not to be gross, but I will tell you, my morning bowel movements are definitely more productive. I have still done the caffeine this week. That will be, tomorrow is Saturday. I am going to give up the caffeine. Howie, good luck. That's all I got to say.
You can put me on hold.
I know, but Howie has to deal with me tomorrow.
There you go.
And so, but we have a solution for the headache. So we'll get to that. But because I know I'm going to have a headache, we're going to do. But I have also been doing celery juice every day in the morning, and I do find that I am feeling very energetic in the mornings, and I have a lot of energy anyway, but it's a different energy. Yeah. It is a different feeling, and I don't know if it is because it's healing the adrenals, and I know mine are a little tired because
it's turning on those mineral salts. Are turning your brain
my
on.
Brain definitely is better. So anyway, so that there's a little just caveat to the celery juice. Go ahead.
So that's celery juice, and I would say if there was one other thing to start that's so easy to do is like I'm always saying, how do we bring in more fruits and vegetables? How do we bring one salad into your day? Like just to commit to saying either at lunch or at dinner, you're going to bring in a big colorful salad with tomatoes and cucumbers and carrots and sprouts and radishes, and you're just going to try to maybe do more if you can of a salad and combine that, pair that with whatever else you're eating. I think those are like the easiest, hydration, possibly bringing down the caffeine when you're ready for it. And the introduction to celery juice and how do I bring in more fruits and vegetables and maybe lowering the fat a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of that this week other than the caffeine part, but
which is big.
It is big. And I am going to, like I said, I am going to do the caffeine, but I do want to also let you know, for those of you that are interested. So I think the big shift for me of why, normally I've done cleanses and I don't even take out the caffeine. Like that's how much of a ritual it is. And I don't even want to say that, I love the process of even having coffee. Like for me, it's the ritual of getting up and making my coffee, and then I sit and I meditate with it, and not on the coffee, I meditate with my coffee. So it's been more of the ritual of it. So
and you can have a ritual with chaga mushroom, and I remember I talked to you a little bit about that. So
so we got to talk about the chaga mushroom. So yes, I'm definitely going to take you up on that. I got to do the chaga mushroom, but my point is that I listened to a podcast that Sherri shared from Anthony. It is about caffeine. I don't know what number podcast, but it's titled
caffeine matcha.
Right, chocolate. Caffeine matcha and chocolate. Yeah. So it was a really fascinating podcast. So you can go on to the medical medium and find that.
It's on Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, or you go to the website and find it, but if you go to Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, it was on Apple Podcasts. And it was sad for me because it was the truth. It was very sad. But then you listen to it and you're like, oh, but you know what? Wow, it makes complete sense. So, we're going to keep going down this rabbit hole. So, and I just want to jump onto what Sherri said of, yes, the lemon water I think is important. And I think dabbling in the celery juice could be great. And the hydration piece is great. Mm-hmm. I think if you look at the sugar you're eating, you've got to cut down on the sugar intake.
The processed sugar.
Sure. Right? I'm not talking about the fruit. Yeah. So we're going to have a protein conversation.
And a fruit.
We're going to have a fruit conversation.
Sugar, fruit, all of it.
Yeah,
it can lead into the protein conversation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But it's all tied in. But again, I'm going to be living, breathing it this week, so I'll let you know. And so we'll have to continue those conversations as well because it's just fascinating. But yeah, we're going to just continue going down this rabbit hole because I have such a willing participant
very willing
to guide me through it and to talk about it. But to really talk about it, it's not just anecdotal. And I think that was the crux for me is that you are doing this work. You are helping people who are so sick and have been so debilitated, and they're finding the light on the other side.
They are.
And I think that was huge for me because that's what we want to do. That I am, when we talk about, that's what lights me up. When you see
testimonials, you're just like, oh my God,
right.
I got to see what's going on over there.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, because it's the first few pages of the Medical Medium book, the revised one, the first, I want to say 10 pages are testimonials from not just, they're from movie stars and, and Hollywood people and billionaire people and entrepreneurs, well-known people who are putting their name to this.
Yes, absolutely. And then if you go on his Instagram, you'll see thousands of people who are sharing their stories, the everyday people that are sharing their stories. Those are, I'm blown away every time I see something.
Yeah. I was watching a woman who was talking about her MS.
Yes,
and
right?
so,
Girl.
is she, young. And is she 100% cured? No, but man, she is doing so much better, and the work continues for her. So I really feel like part of my obligation, like you say, right? My obligation as a healthcare practitioner is
to be curious.
It's to be curious and to really provide support and what is the word? Support and guidance and opportunity and healing to the people that need it, because God only knows we are in need of some serious healing.
We are in need of healing
on this planet.
We are,
for so many reasons,
and only going further down the road this way.
Yes. So this has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you. It was
the hour has just flown. I don't know where it's gone.
It's been great.
And we're going to continue this conversation. So let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know what you want to hear more about. And we're going to keep it going.
You got it.
Awesome. That was fabulous. All right, everyone. This is your Rebel Nutritionist signing off. Make it a great day.